Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's going on, Fantasy Champs? My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me as always. What's poppin', Ricardo?
What's up?
We have an interesting show to get to you today. The final draft-related show of the year, which is crazy. I'm starting to get a little nervous.
Yeah. You feeling it?
Football season's coming. I can't wait to watch the Bills lose on Thursday.
So what happens when they inevitably win by 20 points because you said that?
I mean, they're playing the Rams.
It's week one.
Right,
it's in LA too, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's going to be a tough one for the Bills.
The funny thing is I probably will not own a single Bill or a single Ram.
I own a lot of Bills players. Well, not a lot, but Dawson Knox and Diggs. And then I definitely have my share of Cooper Kupp in some leagues, dynasty leagues.
Mm-hmm.
And Allen Robinson, maybe, who knows?
It could be. But we're going to talk about players on this show that you shouldn't be drafting in fantasy football. We've said before that we don't like doing bust shows, but that is neither here nor there. I don't think this is a bust show. I think
we got to be negative on some people.
We got to be negative on some people.
Happy, jolly about everybody.
These players, we just haven't been drafting for the most part. In fantasy football, whether the ADP doesn't match up with what their value actually is, or if we anticipate a large amount of regression. So, it's just, we'll tell you why this particular player is on the do not draft list and why you should avoid them. But yeah, there's definitely guys that you should avoid in drafts, and let your other league mates draft them and be severely disappointed. But before we do that, check out our website, fantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. For listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcast platforms, please leave a review and share this podcast with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, like, and comment down below any questions you may have for us. And let us know a player that you're not drafting in drafts. You're staying away from. And usually people get a little crazy and they say something like, I'm not drafting Christian McCaffrey. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
All right. But anyway, you ready to get to the do not drafts?
Let's do it.
So number one on this list, and we'll try to make this concise because this is later in the weekend. This might be on Sunday. The show is released.
So you might be listening to this on draft day.
You might be listening to this on draft day, and thank God you are, because this is going to be good information. So anyway, number one on the list for us, and I wouldn't say, like I said, no particular order, but the first guy that we're going to talk about is Darren Waller.
The Walrus.
I love Darren Waller, and I'm not going to lie, I was uber excited when Josh McDaniels, I was not uber excited that he left New England, but I was uber excited that he was with Darren Waller and the Raiders. And so for Darren Waller, I think McDaniels coming over, I was like, this is a great thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, historically, Josh McDaniels has loved to get the ball to the tight end position in the red zone, in the middle of the field. Last year, Hunter Henry had that situation. For years, it was Gronk. So it's like, obviously, there's some variables there, but I think Josh McDaniels was the OC when they ran 11 personnel with Aaron Hernandez and Rob Gronkowski. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So,
I believe so.
For me, with Darren Waller, there was excitement. It was like, okay, this is one of the best tight ends in football. Josh McDaniels finally has one of the best tight ends in football, and his system is almost catered sometimes towards the tight end position. So I was excited about that. And then they got Devontae Adams.
Yep.
And they have Hunter Renfrow.
Yep.
And Darren Waller's a really high draft pick.
Yep.
So there's some concerns now for me, and I really haven't been drafting him. He sustained a hamstring injury, and there has been some issues with some injuries surrounding Darren Waller. He has been off and on the field. He's been practicing some points with the second team, trying to get himself nursed back to health. But there's also reports that he is in discussions to have a deal where he is the highest paid tight end in the NFL, and that he was holding out and it wasn't injury. So it could go many different directions. But to me, with Darren Waller, if he really has been dealing, which they have said, a hamstring injury, that usually trickles into the regular season.
Usually.
The addition of Davante Adams to the team means that a lot of those, there wasn't many vacated targets to begin with for the Oakland Raiders. Oakland, I said Oakland like it's 2007. Yeah. The Las Vegas Raiders. So I think there's not a ton of vacated target share for them. And because of that, I feel like if Davante Adams is going to get a large target share from Derek Carr, they're going to start pulling targets away from Darren Waller. And there's still a little bit of involvement from Hunter Renfrow as well in the slot. So while I still think Darren Waller gets a big package in the red area, I do think there's some concerns for me with Darren Waller for the rest of the season. Like, target share is a concern for me. I don't know. There's a feeling that I have with Darren Waller where it's not great. And then you're using I want to say a 5th round pick on him. It's a 4th round pick on him. It's a
4th or 5th.
It's a high round pick for a player that there's a lot of uncertainty around. Like, the offense is going to be good. We know that much. But in terms of target share, there's some uncertainty there. And if he doesn't get the target share, I mean, Darren Waller could end up either performing at value of where you got him, which is the 5th tight end off the board, or falling up below that into the 6th, 7th, 8th area. And when you're drafting tight ends that high, you want to make sure that you're getting a guy that is really good. And so Darren Waller has been a guy that I haven't really been drafting all that much if I draft tight ends early.
I haven't drafted Waller at all either, but he's not somebody who I think I absolutely wouldn't draft. I just wouldn't draft him at his ADP for Darren Waller. It is funny that he returned to practice the day he signs his contract extension. Hey. So it could very well be that he wasn't really injured, but if he was, hamstring will linger into the season, and he's been hurt a lot through his career. Last year he missed a decent amount of time with injury as well. I do think he's still going to be pretty involved in the offense. Adams will be the number one guy though, without a doubt, and Renfro will take a lot of targets in that slot role, as you said. But Waller will still get his share, and he'll have a decent season. I just am not comfortable with drafting him in the 4th round.
Yeah.
If I'm going to draft a tight end there, first of all, I don't really want to. But I think on Sleeper, he's behind. Kittle's pretty high, but in ESPN and some other leagues, Kittle's there in the 5th, 6th round. I'd rather go in that direction. I'd rather wait on tight end. And if you are going to take a top tight end, Waller's probably the last of the guys that I would take. So he's kind of in a no man's land. If he falls in your drafts, and you want to take Darren Waller, go right ahead. I would take him if he fell. I'd feel a lot more comfortable with Darren Waller in round 6.
Yeah.
In that area. But in the 4th round, the price is too high from somebody who's not, to me, a part of that elite tier of tight ends, and who's also kind of injury prone. I know Kittle's also injury prone, but I think Kittle is going to have, a little bit more opportunity than Waller will.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that
it has a higher ceiling.
Waller last year played in 11 games and had 106 fantasy points, which totaled out to 9.6 per game. He was basically points per game wise in the same conversation as Dallas Goedert, Dawson Knox, freaking Logan Thomas in the 5 games he played for Washington.
He only had 2 touchdowns. That was his reasoning.
So, but even if he adds some touchdowns, he's going to lose some target share this year.
Exactly.
So it's
He's
just
not-
like
yeah.
you're drafting a tight end in the fifth round as the fourth or fifth tight end off the board. Last year in points per game, he was the tight end 7. So you're already targeting a tight end that was undervalued. It's just like Rick said, for me too. I think it's like if he was in the 6th round, like Hawkinson, I would be like, all right, let's go Waller.
Right.
All day.
Exactly.
I take him.
Dalton Schultz.
Yeah, like it's just, to me, I look at this player and I'm like, all right, for Darren Waller, it's just too much. It's too much draft capital to throw at his position.
So
Not just
many
the position, but the player himself.
Good players in his range as well.
Yeah.
That I'd rather pass on,
All right, number 2, Rick, take it away with Elijah Mitchell.
Yeah, this one, I don't know if people are going to love, but I personally have not been drafting Elijah Mitchell. And I think we did a show in like May a while ago, like beginning of the summer or the end of the spring, a very early show.
Yeah.
And we both really liked Elijah Mitchell, and I really liked Elijah Mitchell. I was making a case for him. But as we've gone through the offseason, I've done my projections. I've kind of listened to some other people. I've watched a lot of this 49ers training camp stuff. I'm kind of out on Elijah Mitchell, and it's not because of the player that he is, and I think he's going to get the first crack in the backfield, and he probably for the majority of the year will be the starting running back and could have a decent season. I don't think he has really any ceiling with San Francisco. And the reason being is obviously we all know about the Kyle Shanahan running back by committee thing. I know Trey Sermon's gone, but he was never kind of involved. He was in the Shanahan doghouse. Jeff Wilson will have random games where he gets like 15 carries. They drafted Tyron Davis-Price. He's going to have some games where he goes off. But I think overall, Mitchell will get the majority of the carries. That's not the thing that really worries me. What worries me is he has very limited passing game work. Trey Lance doesn't seem to dump it off to running backs at all. And he wasn't really involved in the passing game at all last season with Garoppolo. So he's going to have little passing game work. And his goal line work isn't really going to be there because now Trey Lance is the quarterback. A quarterback who they do a lot of design runs on the goal line for when he was out there, like Cam Newton in New England or Cam Newton when he was with Carolina back in the day. So the goal line work isn't quite as there, and there's no passing game work. So to me, will Elijah Mitchell get 200 touches? Sure, he might on the ground, and he had 200 carries last year, so I think he can do that. But I just don't see the ceiling with him of being a top running back, even at like a top 12 or top 15 guy, when you're missing the goal line and the passing game work. So, and he's going in the 5th round, which is the running back dead zone. And like Dobbins is a little bit ahead of him, but I'd rather J.K. Dobbins. I think at ADP, I would rather Clyde, which is kind of a hot take, but I would rather Clyde. And you can make the argument for A.J. Dillon too. Gibson, I don't know because the Brian Robinson situation, but at least the first 4 weeks, Gibson's going to be the guy in Washington. And the first 4 weeks, I would absolutely have Antonio Gibson over Elijah Mitchell. So,
okay.
I don't know. I'm out.
Fair enough. He hasn't, I'll be honest with you, he hasn't been a player I've been drafting a lot of, and there's been a lot of hesitation for me because, like you said, the 49ers you just never know. Season in, season out, it's a different guy. Sometimes it's Jeff Wilson. Sometimes it's Elijah Mitchell. This year there was a lot of good reports from about Trey Sermon, but they cut him.
Yeah, which just shows
Shanahan,
like
I think what is his name? John Dorsey is no, that's not the. John Lynch.
He used to, John Lynch. Yeah.
He loves Trey Sermon, probably because he drafted him, and Shanahan disagrees, and he loves
Doghouse.
Yeah, doghoused him, and now he's just cut. So, like, there's going to be running backs here that the 49ers are going to use, but you just never know. This guy also missed 5 games last year. 6 games. Sorry, he missed 6 games last year, played in 11. And so with that being said, if this is a player that misses more time, that's also a concern. You're not investing a whole ton of capital on him, but I think there are running backs that I would rather have. Now, to give a devil's advocate kind of argument here,
Go ahead.
he paced out last year on a per 17 game basis to 320 attempts on the ground, 1,488 rushing yards, 8 touchdowns, 29 receptions, 212 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns.
Very good.
Yeah, those are some pretty...
Do you know what I would say to that?
These are very, very good numbers.
He had almost 100% catch percentage. Not going to happen with Trey Lance. That's going to be way lower. So he had 19 catches, but it was on 20 targets. So that's going to drop. The 207 carries in 11 games, really, really good. And that means, and he was the RB1 though for every game that he played. First of all, I'm not confident that happens. And second of all, Trey Lance is going to take a huge chunk of the team's carry percentage, which is something that Garoppolo didn't do at all. So, like, if the team runs the ball, I have them with 510 rushing attempts, 500 plus rushing attempts. But Trey Lance is going to get like 140 of those, 150 of those. So
yeah, that's fair.
That's going to take away a huge chunk of that. So Elijah Mitchell will still get his 200 carries, I think, but it doesn't really matter. And it's not like Elijah Mitchell, like, I could see him having a good year. I just don't think there's any world where he's an RB1. Is kind of my thing. He would have to get a lot of touchdowns. He would have to be have a lot of big plays, big rushes. They would have to kind of, like, Trey Lance is still going to get his rushing touchdowns, so it would just have to be a really explosive offense where Mitchell and Trey Lance could both get a lot of touchdowns, which I guess could happen, but it's not something I'm willing to bet on.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. I do think that the strongest argument that you do have is, because I'm neither here nor there. I still haven't decided on Elijah Mitchell, and I draft next week, so I probably just won't draft him because of that. But your strongest argument is the touchdown thing, because as soon as they hit the red zone, there's a good shot that they're going to do design runs for Debo. They're going to do design runs for Trey Lance, and the opportunity for him to score more than 8 touchdowns, like this is on a per 17 from last year, he was, paced out to 8 touchdowns. Over under 8 touchdowns for this year, I would take the under. So
yeah,
I think that there's concerns there. The efficiency of the receiving game is probably going to go down. But the question is, can he do last year on the ground what he did, and does he get 320 carries? I don't think he does either, because, like I said, Jimmy G was not rushing the football, so you traditionally just gave it to the running back. With him rushing more, if the team splits are the same, then it's going to be Lance getting a lot of those carries, and Mitchell won't get the same amount. So I think there's going to be I'm trying to find the word, touches regression, if that makes sense. Like, the amount of work that he gets, the amount of carries and targets he gets, I think is going to regress a little bit, which is not good for a player that, what are you doing, drafting him in the 6th round? So yeah, Mitchell,
5th round on Sleeper.
5th round on Sleeper. So he's not a guy that we've had. Quickly on Cordero Patterson, our number 3 guy here. Patterson blows. And last year, he shocked the world and everyone by finishing
a great start to the year
as the running back 9. Had a great start to the year. Won a lot of people games. I will say this is a complete anomaly of a season. It is absolutely an anomaly. He goes back to Atlanta. I thought he was going to get a big contract somewhere, but he ends up crawling back to Atlanta. Atlanta is in a worse situation because they lost Matt Ryan. Their quarterback is Marcus Mariota. And honestly, they might be the worst team in the NFL this year, and they could get the 1st overall pick, which is probably what they're targeting at this point.
Yep.
So they got their crosshairs on the number 1 pick, Bryce Young, and Cordero Patterson, I think, is going to take a massive hit to that total. He's not a great running back. He's not a good wide receiver either. He's not really good much of anything. He's a good little utility player who shocked me and everyone else in the fantasy community with the season he had. And I think drafting Cordero Patterson, expecting him to do what he did last year is a fool's errand. I think a lot of people this weekend are going to come into their drafts in your home leagues, in your work leagues, and they're going to be like, Cordero Patterson finishes the running back 9 last year. I have to draft him. I know a guy in our league that's going to do it.
Oh, probably.
And
yeah.
It's just not, it's a fool's errand to chase the fantasy points of last year.
No, I'll tell you what, through the first 13 weeks of the season, Cordero Patterson was the RB6 for fantasy.
Yeah,
and you were probably in love with that. Everything was great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
After that, week 13 to 18, his last 6 games of the season, he averaged 8 fantasy points per game, which put him at RB33. And that's honestly a high total because he played in one more game than most of the guys behind him.
Mm-hmm.
So he, again, that's a huge drop off. RB33 to RB6. And that's more realistic of what he is. Again, like you said, he's in the worst, arguably one of the worst teams in the league, in potentially a running back committee. And he's like 30 years old,
Yuck.
31 years old. It's super disgusting.
It's horrifying.
Stay away from Cordero Patterson. I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. Maybe if he fell to me in like the 11th round, I would take him. But he's one guy that I'm pretty much not drafting whatsoever.
Yeah, it's that one is a safe bet, I think. And he's also like, he's inefficient and he's like super old. Isn't he like 27?
Yeah, he's 31.
No way.
He's 31.
Yeah, there's nothing really lining up for Cordero Patterson here. I couldn't give you one reason, like
his pass catching. I'll give him that.
I guess.
PPR, he had 52 receptions last year.
It's so funny. He played 16 games last year and he had 153 rush attempts for 618 yards. 4 yards a carry.
Yeah.
It was all.
He had 11
receptions.
touchdowns.
11 touchdowns, and it is just like, if you want to dive into the stats, definitely regression in the touchdown category, definitely a regression in the receptions category.
Probably a regression in total carries. I don't think he's got 153.
Like, at this point, Cordero Patterson is an easy back away and don't draft. But
Mike Davis outscored him.
You have to say it. I feel like you have to.
At the end of the season. Yeah.
Number 4 is Drake London.
Attacking the Falcons right now.
People are going to get their panties in
Patterson. All right, this one is in Patterson. This is a little different.
I love Drake London. I think he's going to be a great wide receiver in the NFL. I actually think that, I would love to have him on my fantasy team, and I also the Saints are going to have a good offense this year. There's been some really, really good things coming out of New Orleans. He's Atlanta, right?
Yeah,
I just
totally
went
about.
into the Saints, man. I was thinking of Chris Olave in my brain.
Oh, see.
All right, so yeah, Drake London. I'm sorry.
Falcons. We even said this is.
Yeah, see, I wasn't listening. I apologize. Drake London is in a really scary situation with Atlanta. So at least for running backs, if you're in a bad system, right? Like Seattle with Rashad Penny or Cleveland with
You're still going to get the carries.
They're still going to get carries, and they're going to be able to produce, and they might be able to do something decent on the field for you in fantasy football. If you're a bad football team, there's a really good chance that the wide receivers aren't very good. This is why I've been out on Kyle Pitts. This is why I am out on guys like Amari Cooper. This is why I'm out on Drake London. Drake London right now, his ADP is 87. And honestly, at this point, looking at Drake London, looking at the Atlanta Falcons, the only reason why people are buying in on Drake London is because there is no other receiving options for the Atlanta Falcons besides Kyle Pitts.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, well, they throw it 500 times. I mean, Drake London's going to get some of that. And it's like, yeah, of course. But he's a rookie wide receiver who's got to work his way into action, who's going to have to figure out how to beat starting caliber NFL cornerbacks in the NFL on a team that blows, that's not going to score a lot.
Yeah.
Why is he getting drafted at pick 87? I get Chris Olave. I get that.
And that's actually low for where, I think on Underdog he's pick 60 something.
Would you rather have Drake London, the rookie wide receiver, or Chris Olave, the rookie wide receiver?
Probably Olave at
He's
their
12
ADP.
picks later.
At their ADP. Yeah.
And he's in a better situation.
I would rather Treylon Burks at his ADP.
He also has some sort of a knee
like
contusion that he's dealing with.
And people are going to take this as like an attack on Drake London's talent, and people are going to be like, "Oh, he's such a good player. Like, just draft the good players."
Hey, can't wait to see him with Bryce Young.
But exactly. It kind of reminds me of Devontae Smith last year,
right?
Who actually ended up having a decent season. I think he was wide receiver 30 or something like that, which I think London can do. But the Falcons are going to blow. Mariota is going to blow. Kyle Pitts is going to be, I think, the top target on that team. In an offense that's might be the worst passing offense in the league, at least one of them. London, as you said, will probably start off slow. I think he's going to start right away, but it's going to take him a couple weeks, I think, before he, gets adjusted to the NFL and NFL offenses and everything like that. And his ceiling is just low because of the touchdowns, and probably the catch percentage, if we're being honest, with Marcus Mariota throwing him the football. So even though I had him projected at a pretty decent amount, I think I have him at like 120 targets, which is pretty good for a rookie wide receiver. And his final numbers were not good still, even with that. So, yeah, and then, we just talked about Patterson, how much he blows, but he's going to be involved in the passing game a little bit. Mariota will dump it off to the running backs. As we said, Kyle Pitts is going to be the number one guy. So that leaves London there with still getting opportunity, but in one of the worst passing offenses in the league. We're not looking at wide receiver twos on other bad offenses. Why are we doing it with Drake London?
Right. It's just an overdraft selection.
He's not like Patterson where I like pretty much wouldn't draft him at all. I think if London fell to you, I would take him. If London fell to me, I would take him. But at pick 87, like he's the top rookie wide receiver off the board, right? I believe.
Yeah.
You gotta double check.
So.
I would not take him as the top rookie wide receiver.
Yeah, I think that's a fair
I don't take him until like
I'd rather Olave, I'd rather Treylon Burks. They're in better offenses, better situations. Like it makes more sense.
I think he should like the Sky Moore Garrett Wilson range. Is where I think he
still
should.
Too high for me, but that's where he should be going. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't understand pick 87.
Underdog dude, he's 71. It's because of the talent. People love Drake London, which again I get, but like temper your expectations year one.
And it's like, oh, he's gonna be that. See, this is the thing. Is like when you look at a guy like Jamar Chase last year, he went to Cincinnati, right? And a lot of people were like, okay, they got T. Higgins and they got Tyler Boyd, but this is the guy. This is the guy for Joe Burrow. He's going to get a lot of target share. And that makes sense because he's on a good offense. Chris Olave goes to a team where he's probably going to get a pretty decent, handsome amount of target share in year one. He's on a decent offense, right? Treylon Burks going to a decent offense where, probably going to be
There's opportunity there.
There's opportunity there. It's like those guys have a better situation than Drake London. And it's like, I don't dislike Drake London. If they had Drake London and then they invested in a quarterback this offseason, then that would change everything. But they didn't. So with that being said, there was rumors about Deshaun Watson going to Atlanta at one point. If that had happened and Drake London was there, this would
be like a 5th round pick.
He'd be a 5th round pick. Yeah, it would be way beyond that. But I think it's all driven by target share, and that's the argument for Drake London. That's about the only argument.
Target share, and to me, quarterback play. I think Mariota is going to be bottom 3 in the league in statistics for quarterbacks.
But I think that's why people like him, though, is that they believe that because he's the only guy literally in the locker room that's a wide receiver. The Bears,
for example, and we go back to this talking about Cole Kmet and Darnell Mooney all the time. 16 passing touchdowns last year. 16 total passing touchdowns.
Over under for Marcus Mariota.
It's about that number.
Yeah.
It's maybe a little, I would maybe say tiny over, like he could get like 18 to 20, but like he's not throwing more than like 22 passing touchdowns.
What people don't realize in the NFL is that if you suck at quarterback, you don't throw more than 20 touchdowns.
Usually, yeah.
Like Tua last year, he had 16.
Yeah, I think Tua did miss some time though, didn't he?
Yeah, something like that. I always attack Tua because I hate the Dolphins, but
because you're a Pats.
Yeah, whatever.
But yeah, Sam Darnold, is a good example.
But it's like if you just can't play quarterback in the NFL, you're not going to throw more than 15, 16, 17 touchdowns. And Mariota is no exception. And they don't have another guy they can run to. Like, this is it. This is Atlanta. They suck. They blow. They're not going to be a good football team. If you're a Falcons fan, I'm sorry.
Yeah, they blow. They suck.
Drake London's a great wide receiver in a terrible situation, and I think it's not a smart decision.
It's just not someone I'm targeting. That's basically
Let's move on to the final guy and conclude the show. It's Amari Cooper of the Dallas Cowboys. Man, I almost said Dallas Cowboys. The Cleveland Browns. Now, if Deshaun Watson was playing, would your opinion change?
Absolutely.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, absolutely.
The problem here is that for 11 weeks of the regular season, Amari Cooper is going to be playing with Jacoby Brissette.
Yeah.
That's not good.
No, it is
very
not.
bad. Jacoby Brissette has had opportunity to start. I don't think he's carried a wide receiver. Two, let alone. I could be wrong about that, but
yeah, I don't think so.
I look at this situation Go ahead.
I was just gonna say as a stat, but you could continue, and I'll make my argument after.
Okay. I just feel like Amari Cooper. Dallas was his best opportunity. He's 28 years old. He failed in every single team he was on besides Dallas. And now he goes to Cleveland, where they don't have a quarterback and they don't throw a lot. I mean, this is as far and away the biggest, I think, avoid player of the entire draft this year in fantasy football. Mm-hmm. He's getting drafted like right around the same area as Metcalf. And I would honestly take Metcalf over him. Like, this is just, I have no desire or want to draft Amari Cooper. There's no touchdown upside. The opportunity's not going to be great. I think with Deshaun Watson towards the end of the year, maybe he might see a resurgence, but do you really want to hold him for 11 weeks and hope that he's good?
Nope.
Yeah,
not really.
So with Amari Cooper, I'm just straight out. I'm not drafting him. I will let whatever team that you draft him. You're drafting a player who's going to sit on your bench for 11 weeks, and you got to make the playoffs, bro.
Yeah, it's one thing to do that.
To use him in the playoffs, you have to get there.
It's one thing to do that if he's like a 12th round pick and you're drafting him to sit on your bench for 11 weeks, which still blows.
Yeah.
You're doing it at like 6th round value.
Right.
Like, you're drafting him to be like a wide receiver 3 or 2,
mm-hmm.
or be like a flex option.
Yeah.
You're starting flex week to week. It's just not smart. Jacoby Brissette in his preseason game, I think his last preseason game, he had 15 passing attempts. Mm-hmm. Only 5 of them went to wide receivers. Historically, Jacoby Brissette is in the top 5 in the NFL in targeting the tight end position, which might be a good thing for David Njoku, even though the offense still blows. So Brissette prefers going in other routes. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't think he's ever had a receiver as talented as Amari Cooper, so that's fair. But still, he's not going to be the quarterback that chucks it down the field to Cooper at all. So the first 11 weeks, he's not going to be good. He will not be good. Even if he has a decent target share, which, I mean, he'll have the most targets for the wide receiver group without a doubt. But I don't think he's going to be efficient. I don't think there's going to be a lot of touchdowns there. And by the way,
it's 12 weeks because there's a bye week after their week 11 game.
Right, which blows for them. But
you get him for 5 games.
Yeah. Yep. I think he'll be good with Watson.
I think he'll be all right.
If Watson is back to what he was right away.
Yeah, there's so much with Cooper that's just bleh. Like, even with Watson, I don't think that they're I don't think they're changing offensively.
No, but I feel a lot more comfortable because...
Do you think they pass more with Deshaun Watson?
No, they don't, but Watson will historically...
And they did with Baker. I'll say than they did with Baker. I'm not factoring in the Jacoby Brissette thing.
I know he had DeAndre Hopkins, but even when Hopkins left Houston, Watson targeted Will Fuller like 140 times. Like, he has a guy that he goes to. So I do think Cooper would be good with Watson, but will he be good with Watson right away? Probably not. And they have like 5 games to figure it out. And it's a redraft. I honestly think
you're better off waiting for a team to like draft him and then get fed up, because this is not like a suspension for 12 games where you draft him and like he's playing week 1. So you let another team draft him, you let them get fed up, and you let them drop them, essentially. And then you wait until later in the season where you're like, okay, all right, I'm going to take Amari Cooper. All well, you didn't waste your, whatever round draft selection on Amari Cooper, and you were able to pick him up and use him for the second half of the season. I think it's stupid to draft Amari Cooper. There's no good reasoning to draft him. So he's definitely been a guy I'm avoiding.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Not even close.
Anything else on Cooper?
No, I think that might be it.
All right, there you go. The completion of the final draft show, sincerely from the deepest part of our heart. We hope you do well this weekend, unless you're in our home league. Be sure to check out all our content next week as we jump into week 1 and start analyzing some stuff. We'll see you later, guys.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube, and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.